Gentlemen, I have created a monstrosity. I present to you the ultimate sloth. This is a work in progress, so I'll just walk you through what I have so far. We're using Bash Whirlwind just for the bleeding bonus and a few other reasons. We've got Rallying Cry, of course, Charge, because we like to get around, Death Blow, 20 ranks, and Wrath of the Berserker, and Unconstrained. Some of you may see where this is going already. For the gear, we have Amulet of Encroaching Wrath. This gives us a huge bonus to Death Blow after we spend Fury, which we do with Whirlwind. We've got on our rings a couple of trash aspects. I would love to find something better because these are completely degenerate, terribly designed, and antithetical to my beliefs. However, they have big numbers associated with them. So it works in the spreadsheet. It would be incredibly obnoxious in actual gameplay. Anyway, elements, 30%. Inner Calm, 30%. Grandfather, Retribution, 30%. Edge Masters, 20%. And Overkill. I think it might be better to use a legendary two-handed mace with optimal aspects or affixes and some other aspect. Probably move Encroaching Wrath down here and then maybe use something else up here, or maybe even Banished Lord's Talisman. I don't know. One of these could also be Red Ring of Fur, but again, it's always a trade-off trying to decide if you want a unique versus something with really good affixes. Anyway, we'll just continue. Ghostwalkers, Leggings of Might for some defense. Hectic Gloves, they just announced that they're nerfing this, so maybe I don't want to run this. I'm not really sure yet. Iron Blood for more DR, and Weapon Master's Skullcap. So this is just for the extra charge. We do not need the chance to stun. So that's the aspects. The reason we don't really need the chance to stun is this build is designed to kill everything in one hit. I don't have anything in concussion, but I do have +2 concussion on these 5 armor pieces, tempering affixes. So that gives us a rank 10 concussion without actually putting anything into it. So we have a 100% chance when hitting enemies, if we lucky hit, to stun them. Actually, that's 150% with a two-handed mace. So based on the math for how lucky hits work and those procs, with the Death Blow of a 50% chance and then the 150% chance on a lucky hit, you actually multiply those together and you've got something like 75% chance on every hit to stun. But like, how often do you really need to stun things once they're instantly dead? I don't know. Anyway, sometimes things might live. That's not really the focus of the build. The focus of the build is huge damage. So our crit chance, let's talk about the affixes for a bit here. You'll notice I have crit strike chance, a greater affix with a masterwork crit gives 22% on the amulet. My rings are both 11% for crit chance, and then the gloves are another 22%. I have a base crit chance of 5, of course, and then 10% from my dexterity, which is around 500. That brings the total up to 81%. I get an additional 15% from a elixir, and then 5% from the glyph blood feeder, which I've put in the Warbringer board. So as long as I'm hitting something that's bleeding, that'll bring me up to 100% chance to crit. I make things bleed with Whirlwind, so I'm going to assign two-handed sword to Whirlwind, and I don't really need Furious Whirlwind. The sword passive weapon expertise makes things bleed, so that'll cover that base. However, I'm going to leave Furious Whirlwind here so I don't forget to talk about something later called Rage of Haragath, my favorite chest, which I'm not using in this setup. Anyway, so every attack will crit, okay? How do we make Death Blow also overpower? Using Combat Bash. So if every attack crits, all I need to do is bash 4 times, and then my next Death Blow will be a crit overpower. And that sounds pretty nice. Since we're going to be spamming bash, I thought, well, why not just max out its ranks? And then on the legs, I have 5 more ranks of bash. I've got 1 tempering affix of bash cleaves, which will allow us to hit multiple enemies and potentially stun any of them and gain fortify by hitting any of them. And if for some reason we didn't crit on one of the enemies, maybe we'll crit on a different one. Anyway, spamming bash in AoE is going to be pretty nice. We'll just instantly lock down anything in front of us. After hitting 4 times, we'll throw out a death blow, and it should kill anything that's standing there, which will bring death blow off cooldown. And if it's not, because something for some, if we like didn't kill something, like maybe it's a big boss, then we've got a second death blow because we have 2 charges. And if we do run hectic, then hopefully that, along with all of our cooldown reduction, will allow us to use death blow more often than just like once every 15 seconds, which honestly sounds like maybe the biggest drawback of this build. Anyway, let's move on. So some of the other affixes I've got, let's see. I've got strength on just about everything. Not only does that give us a lot of additional damage, it also gives us a ton of armor. I'm at the armor cap, actually a little bit over it. They announced today that the armor caps would be around 90, what was it, 9,300, 9,200. No matter the level of the enemy, as it goes above 100, that's the official final armor cap. So we're actually hitting that just based on having a ton of strength and then 1 armor affix on our chest. Doesn't even have to be a greater affix or get a masterwork crit on it, so that's pretty cool. I've also got max life all over the place on just about every piece of gear I could put it on, because not only does this give us tons of survivability, it also increases our overpower damage. So I've got a couple resists on my rings, lightning, and I just picked shadow. And then the implicit modifiers on my rings are fire and poison, and so I've gemmed them accordingly. The fire ring has a fire gem, the poison ring has a poison gem, and then you'll notice cold is the 5th element I didn't mention yet. I've got a cold gem in the amulet, and I've actually got a few more points of cold resist in the carnage tree. So this is good. In fact, I think this might even be unnecessary. Yeah, I just picked this anyway because if you're if for some reason, wait, no, actually that shouldn't ever be necessary. Anyway, I'm just going to leave it there because habits. So what else have we got to talk about? Weapon mastery skills. So this gives 4 ranks to death blow. That's pretty huge. Even though the ranks are near 20, this should increase the damage by like 20% instead of 40%. Yep. No. 13%. Anyway, that's not terrible. +4 to brute force. So our brute force ranks are, well, when they're 3, we have 24% increased damage on overpowers with 2-handed weapons, but at 7 ranks, it's 56%. This is the biggest passive that you can put additional damage into, so that's the one we're going to go with. The additional ranks, maybe, since I said that's 13%, maybe it would be close call, but we might actually want to go with something like wallop, or no, wait, is wallop not even an option? Okay, so yeah, counteroffensive would be 12 or a little less. Heavy-handed, maybe 4 ranks, that's 20%. That might be slightly better than 4 heavy-handed might be slightly better than 4 weapon mastery skills ranks. I'll have to run the math on that, but it's possible. What else have we got? So that's our jewelry affixes. For the rings tempering affixes, I've got death blow damage and death blow cooldown on both. For the amulet, there's death blow damage and death blow cooldown, of course. For our weapons, we've got attack speed, strength, and life, death blow damage, and expose vulnerability. And I think I already mentioned the other mace is the same, except it's bash cleaves. So the expose vulnerability is there because one way to play this build is to use Whirlwind to make everything vulnerable and start them bleeding, and then hit them with a death blow, and then they die, And then the next time you whirlwind, because you have exposed vulnerability, those things become vulnerable and start bleeding, and then you death blow again. So it's just like this really neat pattern, kind of like the whirlwind Hoda, where you just whirlwind Hoda, except in this case it's whirlwind death blow. So that's one way to play it, which sounds pretty cool. I also chose the charge rune, you can call it, with the ability to make enemies vulnerable. So if you do need to make things vulnerable, or you also can gain berserking by charging, so you can charge and then death blow. That's another way to line up a big hit before a boss or an elite or something. And I was also considering using kick, because that would also make things vulnerable. The problem with kick is that if it's tempting to give it power kick so that it will burn through all this fury and proc encroaching wrath, as well as supreme wrath of the berserker, but unfortunately that would make the combat bash proc get consumed by kick, because power kick makes kick a core skill because it consumes fury. So I guess you'd have to like bash 3 times, then kick, then bash again, then death blow. It gets complicated, but that might be actually optimal for max damage. Again, just a kind of work in progress. Not 100% sure if this setup is the best, but I was pretty excited to share what I had so far. So I'll just go through a few more affixes. We've got ranks of death blow on the helm, as well as cooldown reduction, because we need to get our death blow cooldown as low as possible. So that brings us to 4 sources of cooldown reduction. The 21% over here, and then a 15%. So those are combined inverse multiplicatively. I think it gets close to like 50% or 60% or something. So death blow's cooldown, instead of 15 seconds, it'll be like 7 seconds or 6 seconds. And with a hectic that cuts 4 seconds off of some active cooldown, that would be almost perfect. It's too bad they nerfed this, so I'll have to think of something else. Anyway, going right along, we've got a tempered affix, imposing presence. So since we've stacked a ton of life, we're also going to stack a large amount of plus life percent bonuses, and that'll give us this builder says 39%, but it's not counting tempering affixes right now. It's actually going to be 39,000. It's actually going to be more like 50 or 60,000. I think 60. Anyway, because we get imposing presence up to like, rank like 9 or something. There's 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, plus 3 I already had. So rank 12 imposing presence is 48% bonus life. So instead of 40k, it's actually 60k. So that's nice. You'd be pretty tanky. Let's see, what else have I got here? You'll notice I've got ranks of concussion on everything. I think I already mentioned that. So that brings us up to rank 10 without even putting points into it. Pretty sure you can have a skill without putting points into it. Yeah, you can. Active skills, I'm sure you can. Harlequin's Crest does that. Again, we've got strength, crit strike chance on our gloves. Hectic, I already talked about that. Our legs. Concussion, imposing presence, talked about those. Ranks of bash, strength, life, obviously, all the good stuff. And then our shoes. Oh my god, I love this. We've got almost 40% move speed here, 20% in the tempering affix, so that brings us up to 60. We've got Ghost Walker here for a total of 85% bonus move speed. You've got another 12% from Swiftness, the 3 out of 3 talent. And then you've got another, I think, 15% from Berserking. So we're over move cap. Even when you're using Whirlwind, you'll be like, let's see, you need 267% total for Whirlwind to be reduced to 200, which is the cap. So we won't be quite there. We'll probably be like near 210, I think. But anyway, that's not bad. If Berserking falls off, you'll still be pretty high up. If you don't have Ghostwalker active, you'll still be almost 200. So I think that's pretty good. And this is a nice thing to remember for you barbarians. You only need these 3 move speeds plus swiftness to be near the cap. And then of course Berserking, but you want that all the time. So you don't really need to like actively try to remember that, because you're going to have it anyway. Anyway, so yeah, these are some really neat sort of templates that you can use. If I'll just give you a moment to like take in some of the basics. Some of these things are not necessarily part of this ultimate sloth build. It's actually something you can use on your own. So 1 bonus armor is all you need to hit the cap as long as your strength is high enough. I think my total armor is like 9,588. You could even lose 200 and still be at the cap. So that's cool. If you get concussion on the 5 pieces of armor, you have a 100% chance on lucky hit to stun the enemy. That's really cool. And that's with a one-hander. With a two-hander, it's 150%. If you put 3 ranks into it, it's almost a 200% chance on lucky hit. And the way that lucky hit math works is you multiply the proc chance times your lucky hit, and that's your chance to proc on hit. That actually makes a 50% lucky hit skill like Hoda, Death Blow, Lunging Strike have a 100% chance to stun. That's pretty cool. So that's another really kind of overpowered, neat little trick. And then my trick for the resistances, again, is look for rings that have 2 different implicit modifiers, gem them, matching their modifiers. Those rings should also have some other element, right? And then that covers 4. Your 5th one should be cold in the amulet with cold in the carnage tree. So that's my last trick to share. So yeah, that does it for the gear. Let's look at, I've already shown the skills, so let's look at the Paragon. I've got the classic starting board set up with ire, and you'll notice I've gone left and then right to get more armor and life, which I always do. Even though this build is designed to one-tap things, I still pick out as much damage reduction as I possibly can in my Paragon. That's just a good habit to have. Going to the right would have given a small amount of additive damage, which would be like almost irrelevant in this build, and you'll see why soon. So I've got ire. Not only is this giving us a good damage while berserking bonus that we can turn into a multiplicative bonus with Blood Rage, but we also get DR versus elites while berserking, so that's great for survivability and offense. Up here in might, I've got, in carnage, I've got might, which gives us 8% more damage with 2-handers, as well as a bonus to all the magic nodes within range. And I always put might in carnage because all the magic nodes in range are great. Damage while berserking, as I mentioned earlier, really good. DR from close enemies, also really good. So this is giving us both offense and defense where we've put it. I mentioned picking up the cold nodes here. We path down through more damage while berserking. This cluster's not the best, but it's worth it. We go up here to get Flawless Technique and Territorial. You could pick up this legendary node, although I think it's too many points to go and get it, and we're already at 100% crit chance, so this I think is unnecessary unless your gear is like suboptimal or you don't want to use the elixir or something like that. But points are kind of tight, so I said, no, we're not going to do that. Anyway, this glyph has more damage reduction from close. That's great. And I put Territorial in here for more damage reduction against close enemies. If you're not squishy, you could actually remove this entire board or just path over to Flawless Technique or something else. This additional additive damage against close targets is kind of, again, like almost nothing. 50% is totally a forgettable amount of additive damage, so that's not necessary. We go down here to Blood Rage. I put Undaunted here because it gives us more DR. This is a very good one because if you are like not completely fortified, you still get some damage reduction, so that's nice. It's like a stable amount of DR. It doesn't just disappear suddenly. I like to path through here with a willpower node because it's like really efficient. We don't have to waste points picking up anything pretty much. So all this satisfies that glyph. We go over here, we get Blood Rage. The current bonus, I only have 19%. It caps at 30, so I could have maybe changed the affixes on one of my maces to be damage while berserking. Like maybe instead of expose vulnerability or something. Actually, would it be instead of death blow damage? Maybe that's, I don't know. Anyway, would be maybe a small gain. I'll leave it to the audience to decide whether I've made the right choice there. We go over, pick a couple more damage while berserking nodes. We go up into Warbringer. This is a good place for Warbringer, even if, like, let's say your build requires a large amount of max fury. If you're going for like power kick or anything with Ramaladni's magnum opus, um, you would want to pick those up. But since we're just doing death blow with a two-handed mace, we don't need those. I also, in the past, would have picked up Warbringer, but since we're a bash build, we get our fortify through bash, so we don't need that. That frees up a lot more points. This is a great board to put a dexterity glyph in, so I put Blood Feeder here. This will give us our crit chance. That'll cap our crit chance, actually. We don't... Do we need this? Oh, yeah. I pick up just a few resist to all elements. If some of your rolls are suboptimal, maybe you'll want to get a couple more of these, find those points somewhere else. But this is a pretty good setup. Brings all of our resistances to the cap. All right, moving on. We are in Bonebreaker. This board, I don't really like the legendary node unless you're like just a fresh level 50 with no way to overpower. What I love about this board is the overpower damage of the rare and the magic nodes is actually pretty big, given that it's like only 1 point per node to get those. And then we've also got damage reduction while healthy, which not always useful, but still pretty good. And it's a good board for a strength glyph. So I've put Crusher here. This used to be better previously in like Season 3, but it's still pretty good. So yeah, let's pick that up. And why not Path down here? This is one of my favorite clusters. We've got max life and armor. Unfortunately, I've placed this board so far behind the other ones, I'm actually not satisfying the rare node requirements, but it's not the end of the world because additional life, additional overpower damage, additional damage reduction, but only while healthy. Maybe it would be worth it to move this board and swap it with Warbringer because I actually don't need any of the rare nodes in Warbringer. That might be a slightly better setup, but I'm too lazy to do it. All right, and so last but not least, we've got Decimator, and I put Revenge here. So Decimator we use because damage reduction versus vulnerable enemies, more damage reduction all the time. Anytime we can get it, it's good. And Revenge boosts rare nodes that are nearby, so we get even more damage reduction. And Revenge also gives us up to 8% more damage. Unfortunately, I've actually removed my sources of thorns in this build currently, so I'm not really sure. Let's see. If we don't need that, we can do this. There we go. Now we can proc that. Cool. Yeah, so we've also got Decimator. Classic. Anyway, that's the build. There are some variations on this which would be potentially maybe a little bit better. Like, instead of, let's just pretend, oh, here we go. If I don't get thorns from Outburst, maybe I'm going to run Rage of Hergath. And Rage of Hergath gives me thorns and lets me reduce cooldowns when I inflict bleeding. Well, I'm just going to spin around for a while. If I don't have Deathblow off cooldown, why don't I just spam Whirlwind on enemies? I'll be proccing Rage of Hergath a lot. And I can actually, well, hitting like 3, 4, maybe like 5 enemies at once with Furious Whirlwind with Rage of Hergath. You'll get your death blow. I think the cooldown will be close to like 5 seconds instead of 15, or maybe like 2 seconds instead of 7. So this actually is a very good option. Whirlwind with Furious Whirlwind and Rage of Hergath. And this is not just for death blow. I think in general, this type of build would be really good if you're also like Dust Devils build. Run 3 shouts. They'll all come off cooldown after just like 5 seconds. So you'll just be spamming shouts constantly while using Whirlwind. And Whirlwind is going to spawn Dust Devils. Every time you use a shout, you're going to spawn Dust Devils. The screen will just constantly be full of Dust Devils. That's going to be pretty good. May even be possible to like integrate that build idea with this one, but I didn't want to overcomplicate it because every time you pull in 2 different directions, you just fight against yourself and don't get much done. So I just thought, let's focus on Deathblow for this. I could make a different video for that later, though. The Bleeding Whirlwind Dust Devils build. And I'm probably not the first person to suggest that. So if there's another one out there, just go look at theirs. Let's see. So that would be one way to get your Deathblow off cooldown faster. Again, I was planning to use Hectic, but they're nerfing it to the ground, so I think that might not be great. Anyway, too bad. Well, I think that's pretty much everything. There were some other variations I mentioned, like running Banished Lord's Talisman instead of Encroaching Wrath, moving Encroaching Wrath down to the two-hand hammer, dropping Overkill and just running a Legendary Hammer, or maybe even dropping Grandfather and running something else here would be optimal. You could try using Red Ring of Furor instead of one of these rings, and then guaranteeing your crit chance just by spending Fury. Then you can run something else instead of crit chance on your rings and Amulet and Gloves. Interesting. Yeah, that could have some potential too. Let's see, what else was there? You might want to reduce the cooldown of Charge by ranking it up and switching this glyph to that one, and then running like Tybalt's Will, and then you can just do like Charge, Death Blow, Charge, Death Blow. That might be a great way to like AoE grind levels out. I might try that. And then Kick, if you want to dump Fury with Kick instead of Whirlwind, that would probably be even better for bossing. But as I mentioned before, you would have to be careful not to eat your overpower proc with Kick unless you are actually going for a high Kick build, which I should mention now. When I ran the numbers, the math for Kick, do I actually have that here? I think I do. All right, so people are probably by now saying, hey, they just nerfed, everything for Barbs. Why are you doing this? Everybody's talking about Dust Devils. Why is Sloth obsessed with Deathblow? Okay, so let me just zoom in here. Oh wait, did I already? I thought I lined these up. I did. Okay, perfect. I thought I had this time. So Hoda this season is going to be like doing 1/8 of the damage that it did in season 3, or maybe even 1/10 of the damage that it did. So although it was possible to do like way too much damage before, and maybe just doing like 1/8 or 1/10 of the damage we did before, some very like ambitious and dedicated players will still be one-tapping bosses with Hoda. Good on you guys. I want to see it happen. But I believe other skills are now going to actually pull ahead quite a lot because of these nerfs to Hoda. Upheaval, I calculated, should be doing twice the damage of Hoda at the maximum. And then Kick, just using a two-handed mace and 100 Fury, dumping all that Fury, should be hitting just about as hard as Hoda, a little bit harder. Deathblow will be a little bit harder than that, at doing like 3x Hoda damage. And these numbers don't seem too crazy, right? If you've played a Barbarian at all, you probably have tried these abilities and you're like, yeah, that sounds right. Charge with the two-handed mace is still going to be huge, and that should surprise no one who played Season 3. Charge was insane. Deathblow versus a boss. Now, this is where it gets pretty crazy. So Deathblow's Enhanced rune gives you an additional 150% damage when hitting a boss. Kind of, I guess, to like compensate you for never immediately bringing it off cooldown because you don't actually kill things in one hit. Well, we're going to anyway. Because of that, it's basically a 2.5x like total damage, right? So instead of doing like 300%, we'll do 2.5 times that, which is like 800%. So this means Deathblow optimally will be hitting as hard as 8 Hodas. And how I said Hoda is only 1/8 as powerful as it used to be, well, this is going to make up for that. So we'll see numbers with Deathblow, just using a two-handed mace, and the rest of your gear is optimal, like I've shown. The numbers with Deathblow when hitting a boss will be comparable to the numbers with Hoda last season, even with all the nerfs. Maybe even more damage, because we've got tempering affixes and stuff. I've actually calculated it. And then another option instead of Deathblow would be Power Kick. If you use Ramalati's Magnum Opus and your Fury is at like 325, which is actually pretty difficult to get that high. You have to run Tybalt's Will and like Banished Lords, no, like Selig or something. Like there's all these uniques. You have to run like what is it? Tuskhelm instead of Shaco because it has Fury. So there's all these conditions. I think there may be too many trade-offs. It might not be worth it, but I want to run the numbers for that at some point. But anyway, it's like even if you have 325 Fury, which is really hard to get, Power Kick, only at that point does it become more powerful than Death Blow. So I'm like, is it even worth it to try? I think there's going to be some crazy people out there who do like get 400 Fury and have Power Kick hitting harder than Death Blow, and I want to see that happen. More power to you. All right, so the last thing I want to show is like, what does all this mean? I mean, you're just throwing out these individual multipliers and stuff and saying it's going to be harder than Hoda. Well, how much is it actually going to deal? Okay, so I calculated that. I've using the D4 planner for Maxroll. This is an awesome tool. I've pulled out all my additive damage from the stats, added it up here, and then the overpower damage. I've had to like manually. So what's presented here is like some convoluted. It takes your additive mode overpower damage and then like increases it by 50%. This is exactly what it does in game. If you actually want to know what your additive damage is, it's like way more complicated. I'll make a video about that later. Anyway, so if you incorporate my 60k life and fortify with the additive overpower I get from items in Paragon, my total overpower additive is like 2,600, right? So then my total additive is over 3,000. And then taking into account all the additive bonuses I get from additional death blow damage from my tempering affixes, that's another 1,000. So my total additive is 4,000. All right, so that's the additive damage. The skill base damage of death blow at rank 22 is 362%. That's disgusting. That's huge. And then it gets a 150% bonus there. With an optimal weapon, the minimum is 3,200, but the maximum is 4,903. Yep, that's that. So if I take 4,903, multiply it by 362%, multiply that by 2.5, and going down to my additive damage is 4,194%, so the multiplier for that is 42.94. I multiply that in, and then all my other multipliers, my strength, oh my god, my strength, 2,449. How in God's name? Anyway, yeah, that's yep. I put strength on literally everything. I got to give credit to Beatdropper. He's the one who said, strength, life, everywhere. And I said, you know what? This man's a genius. I'm going to do it. And it's awesome. Yeah, glad I did that. So our total damage from skills with a 244% bonus from strength will get a multiplier of 3.545. And then the rest of my multipliers, what did I pick out? Okay, we'll be hitting a vulnerable target, 20% bonus. We'll be critically striking, 50%. Overpowering, 50%. Our Blood Rage gave us 19%. We've got Might for 8%, Crusher 20%, Decimator 20%, Encroaching Wrath 105. Elements, 30%. Intercalm, 30%. Grandfather, because we're critting, 100%. This is Heavy-Handed, because we're critting with a two-hander, 15%. Wallop, we are using a mace against a vulnerable enemy, 15%. Brute Force, rank 12, 56%. Retribution, because the enemy's stunned, 30%. Well, it's a boss, maybe they're not stunned. Forget it, 30%. Edge Masters, 20%. Counteroffensive, 12. Pit Fighter, 9. Supreme Wrath of the Berserker, so we've got a pop Wrath of the Berserker, dump 200 Fury, then we'll have 200%, because our unconstrained key passive makes Berserking 100%. Supreme doubles that to 200%. Right. Expertise bonus. So this is because we're using a two-handed hammer, and we're going to hit we're going to critically hit while berserking, so we get 15% increased critical strike damage. Technique, this is the two-handed axe technique, hitting a vulnerable enemy, 10% more damage. So if I turn these into multipliers, got them all right here, and then multiply all of these numbers together, what do I get? 3.4 billion damage. Now, enemies have damage reduction. How much? If we're hitting a level 100 enemy, It's 68%. 1 billion damage. Yes, that's right. We can death blow for 1 billion damage on screen. And this is just me throwing shit together. Like I said, not 100% optimal. I would love to see someone squeeze as much as they can out of this. I think we need anywhere from like 1 to 2 billion, or maybe as much as like 10 billion damage to one tap literally anything this coming season. Can we possibly turn this 1 billion into 10 billion? It's going to be hard. I don't know. That's too much. Can we do it? Can we do it? Am I only 10% of the way there? Could it be? I don't know. Anyway, if anybody wants to take this and run with it, please do. Again, there's so many different things, different directions you could take this. It's not optimal by any means. It's just some garbage I threw together. My boss one-tap build. I'll put a link to this in the video description. And please let me know what you think. If you have a certain idea that you think could like bring this closer to that 2 billion, or God forbid 10 billion, I would love to hear about it. Or maybe you have a completely different idea. Or if you want to see something that's not even a boss one-tap build, if there's something you really want to see, I would love to produce that. So just let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to see, and appreciate you watching. Thanks.